Welcome everybody. It's cool to have you here, and we're looking forward to sharing some really helpful tips and tricks with you. So I'd like to welcome Jeremy Johnson to the webinar today. He's the Head of Design here at Rocketspark. So before we begin, just remember that if you've got any questions, feel free to use them in the question box, and I'll be here throughout the webinar to answer them for you. And then at the end of the session, Jeremy and I will recap as well. So I'll hand you over to Jeremy now, and he's going to take you through his tips and tricks for web design. I'll leave you in his capable hands.
Cool, thanks Greg. Morning everyone. As Greg said, I oversee all things design at Rocketspark. A key part of that is the design of the Rocketspark software user interface and how the design of how you interact with the different features and that sort of thing, but also I design our own Rocketspark website as well. So we're going to be covering 4 key areas today. One is the design process and kind of how you approach the start of a project to make sure that these other things go smoothly. The other thing is creating image galleries on Rocketspark in a few different ways that maybe you might not have thought of doing in terms of using picture blocks and that sort of thing. The other thing is advanced stack background options and just sort of tips and tricks with getting the best out of the stack background feature in image backgrounds. And then just the advanced use of the picture block and using it for things like call to actions and hover effects and that sort of thing. So just starting with the design process, the beginning is really important just to make sure that the whole design process goes really smoothly and you don't sort of back yourself into a corner with the client or end up with any difficult situations. So it can save a lot of time getting it right at the beginning. And there's essentially 3 different ways you can approach a new website design project. From our experience, we've found two of them can work, and one just really doesn't. It only leads to issues. So the first one is essentially design first and then get the content second, and get a content writer to essentially fill in the gaps. This approach works when they're getting their content written by a content writer. So essentially when you're designing, you design the page with placeholder content. So you see on this Centurion example, we've used Lorem Ipsum text. So by doing it this way, you can design a beautiful layout and also design the amount of content that's actually required. And then when you hand this over to the client, they can approve the design and the amount of content, and then that gets handed over to a content writer, and the content writer has a template to work within, and they can write the appropriate length of content to fit the design. So we found that works well. The second approach is getting the content first and then turning that into a design. So this is the most common approach, where clients have an existing website maybe that has all the content that they want to keep, or the content writer has already done their part and it's all ready to go. We think this is the best option. It gives you the most flexibility and usually ends up with the best result in terms of design for the client. The key thing with that is that the content comes in its raw form and might not be in a great structure for good design. And so it's not a matter of just slapping the content up there because that's what the client's asked for. It might be lacking headings or have long paragraphs, just like you would slice and dice content supplied from a client for a brochure or a catalog for a print design. You need to do the same for a website's content. So work it nicely into the design, break up long paragraphs of text into bite-sized chunks, create headings out of the existing content if there isn't any. Doesn't mean that you have to rewrite their content. That would be really slow going. It's actually quite a fast job to slice and dice the content, maybe in a Google Doc or something like that. And it's just a design kind of housekeeping thing, so that you've got really nice building blocks to essentially turn into stacks and blocks. We've found that if you put in really long form raw content that needs a lot of formatting straight into the design and then try and slice and dice it once it's already in the Rocketspark system, it takes a lot longer than if you do that kind of housekeeping in advance. and think about how you might want to break it into stacks and blocks beforehand. So this accounted for site as an example where we were given sort of raw form content, and we've sliced and diced that into bite-sized pieces that will look nice in the design. So the process that we would recommend avoiding is designing with placeholder content while content's being written kind of in a parallel situation. We've found this is the worst way to go. You do a great design that the client loves, the client has in the meantime got the content sorted, and then when it all comes together, there's nothing that fits together. This means that either the content gets hacked to pieces to fit the design, which isn't great for SEO, or the design gets hacked to bits to fit the content, which ruins the great looking design you've done, none of which is a good situation. So try and avoid this if you can. We've done this, we've avoided this at Rocketspark with our projects with clients by basically specifying one of two options for the client to choose from right at the beginning of the project when you're quoting. So the client can choose to either get a content writer or we won't start the design until they've supplied the content. And yeah, so long as this is clearly communicated right at the start of the quoting process, we haven't had any complaints about that. Cool, so I just want to touch on image sizing. Yeah, there's probably there's probably a spectrum of people sort of doing this in different ways, but with Rocketspark it's actually quite simple. For new design partners, one of the most common questions we get asked is, what size should I make my images for the feature area, or what size should I make my images for the picture block? And the great thing about Rocketspark is there's a really smart image caching engine in the background that automatically resizes the images down to an appropriate web size. It handles retina images, so really high resolution retina screens and non-retina screens. It optimizes for different screen sizes with the new full responsive and on mobile. But the key thing to remember is, because that compression or that caching is happening with Rocketspark, you actually just need to upload your images at sort of way larger than the largest possible situation that they might need to exist in the design. And then the Rocketspark system will automatically size those down. So for feature area, if say 2,500 pixels might be at the upper end in terms of screen size for someone on a large IMAX screen and browsing the web, but then you need that retina size, so we would say 5,000 pixel wide images is kind of the minimum really for feature area images. And the other thing with the feature area is, even though you might upload an image at say 2,000 pixels on your laptop screen, that's not retina resolution, it might actually look really sharp, but someone who's on another screen resizing that feature area up to a larger size, it might actually be blurry and you might not really experience that. So it's actually safer just to upload at a really large size and just make sure that you've got way more resolution than you need to work with. So the other thing is picture blocks. So it's easy trap to get into to think, oh, I just need to make this image the size of the block that I'm creating. So if it's a quarter column width, this picture doesn't need to be very big, so it's because it's only in a quarter column width. But we've found that we like to upload pictures for picture blocks at sort of at least 3,000 pixel wide, because you never know, you might want to move that block into a wider column or full column. So it just gives you that full flexibility to be able to move that picture block into any of the blocks without getting yourselves into a trap where you haven't actually got enough uploaded resolution on that source image. So something else I want to talk about is text over images. So one of the most effective ways to give a website a really high-end look and feel is having text over your feature area or text over a static background image. But it needs to be done well, and if it's not done well, it can have the reverse effect, and it can look a bit poor. and not well designed. So a key technique there is choosing images with dead space, that the text will stand out and contrast well, positioning text to the left or the right side of the image, so it's not overlapping the focal point of the image. So rather than just centering the text in the middle of the image and hoping for the best, there's other ways of approaching that. This technique will actually become a lot easier as well with the new feature editing controls, where you'll be able to adjust the width of feature area content to a narrow width and move it to the left side, and then have the focal part of the feature area image on the right side, for example. So I'm just going to show some examples of various situations where that's been used. So you'll see here this feature area example here is just a really nice example where clear-cut imagery has been used with a large sort of grey dead space, where the text and the button stands out really crisply against the background. And same with this image, even though it's not a solid colour, there's the sacrificial space here where the text contrasts really nicely, and then the focal point of the image is not overlapping the text. Again, this is another example where the photographers, we actually gave the photographer the brief to have space for the text in the design. This example is actually from one of our design partners. Example from Kaz Graphic Design, where they've got a really nice image here of a chainsaw, and this is actually one full stack background image, but they've got this nice sort of gradient background on the right side here where the text stands out really nicely. It's just a really nice technique to add polish to the design. Just a couple more examples of that technique. So these are some new templates we're working on for Rocketspark, and again, this is a stacked background image where the sky here is a nice clean space. We're putting a heading and a button, and we've actually, with the stacked background feature, we've positioned this background image bottom. So regardless of how the window resizes, you've always got nice space at the top there for the text and the button to stand out. And then similar idea here, where you've just got a nice clean part of the wave, the text is to the side and stands out clearly there, and the focal point's on the right. Regarding text over images, be careful with tinting an image with a color overlay so heavily that you lose the impact of the image. It's sort of the fastest, easiest way to get text to stand out is to add, dark tinting or color tinting to an image in the feature area or stack background. But as soon as that image loses its sort of pop and is sort of too dull, it loses its impact, and you have to sort of ask the question of, is there any point the image even being there if it's just becoming a background texture? So we've found that it's best not to try and force it in terms of text over an image that's not working well. So either we'll try and find a different image, or we'll do the text in a different way so that the image can stay the hero focus. So the second tip that we're going to go through is galleries. So you've probably all worked out by now that the Rocketspark gallery stack is not as good as what it could be. It's one of our older features, and we have plans for a new gallery or grid stack in the future that we'd like to do that will really improve that. But there's actually some really nice ways to build galleries using the picture block now, and when we're building galleries ourselves, that's what we use rather than the gallery stack. So we've just got some examples here. So with Tehihi, this is actually essentially folded galleries. So if we could go through to the accommodation gallery, we can click on that, it's a button, and then we've got a nice masonry layout here where the images are sized to showcase their respective strengths at different aspect ratios, but it's still in a nice, clean, tidy looking layout. Likewise here with mid-int heights. So nice panoramic image, looks good at the full width there, and then you can even weave call to action buttons within the gallery. So they've got snuck in a make a booking button here, just to fill out that masonry layout. So I've also built an example gallery here. This is one where I've cropped all of the images to be the same dimension, so just a nice tidy grid. I'll go into editor mode now, and with the picture block, there's the option to, with the link, enlarge picture in a pop-up. And so what I've done here is I've actually built a gallery with three column stacks stacked on top of each other, and I've put a picture in each column. I've made the spacing between the stacks uniform by reducing the spacing at the bottom and the top, and then the bottom and the top, and then adding more spacing at the bottom and more spacing at the top to create that. And the reason I've done that is if I go back into preview mode and click on the first image, that opens in a pop-up, and I can actually click on this arrow here and cycle through the images in that gallery, and it actually will find all images that have that tick box enabled for enlarging image in a pop-up, and we'll cycle through all of them. So this is actually a really nice, simple way to create quite a eye-catching gallery on the page that enables people to enlarge and view a bigger version. And so the reason why I've haven't just done these all in one stack and I've done them as 3 rows is that if you want the order to go exactly this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, in terms of top row first, second row, then third row, you need to do them as separate stacks. Otherwise it'll do the first column top to bottom, and then the second column top to bottom, and then the third column. So I'm just going to have a look at the spacing settings that I've used to build this gallery. So this first row here, if we look at the spacing settings, so you see I've gone to get more spacing options, and I've set the bottom spacing as 0 and the top spacing as 17 here to give some spacing below that heading. And then the next one down on the spacing, I've just got it set as 0 top and bottom, and then at the bottom, the last one, I've got more spacing bottom. So the other thing as well that I've done here is I've put a single column stack above this and put a text block in here, and by making multiple stacks have the same stack background color, it enables you to create the visual appearance of one stack background, even though they're different column sizing and that sort of thing. So the next thing I'm going to cover is stack backgrounds. And stack backgrounds are a great way to add extra polish to a page design, to keep it visually engaging as people scroll down the page. It's a more modern way to divide sections of content than line stacks. The key thing to remember is that it's an accent. If you apply stack effects to every stack, they all blend together and lose their wow factor. By making some stacks visually pop with a background color or background image, and some stacks clean, it creates a visual contrast between the two. So this is a good example of a site where this beautiful Coromandel stack here is a nice, clean, crisp, white, solid background and a simple 2/3, 1/3 text block, picture block division, and then comparing that against this full background image stack above, it just creates a really nice contrast where each kind of feeds off each other. So the other thing that I'm going to talk about is the use of subtle background effects. So just going to open this example here. So this is an example from one of our UK design partners, the Profitable Firm, and what they've done here for this accounting website is just use stack backgrounds in a really clever way. So with this stack here, they've got this nice sort of gradient pattern image that they've uploaded, and it just adds accent to this text heading here. And then they've continued that as they go down the page. They haven't used it on every stack, so again they're using that technique well, where they're using it as an accent but not on every stack. They've got a really subtle one that may be difficult to see here, but it's just really clean, subtle use of a texture just to add that visual interest back to a nice, crisp, clean white background. Another one, again, another subtle one. And then for the key call to action, they've gone for a more vibrant, eye-catching texture background again. So another technique that can be quite effective for just adding that visual polish to the page is this one here, where by creating a stacked background image that has a hard cut from a solid color background to a photo background, and then only positioning text on one side of the image, you can create this look where the image goes all the way to the top and bottom of the stack and the edge of the window on the right hand side, and then you're balancing that out against a text block on a nice solid color background on the left hand side. So another example of that is here. And the thing that's really nice about this one is that technique has been continued down through multiple stacks. So you've got this interplay between the stack background image here, where the left half is white and the right half is a photo, and then the next stack it's alternating. So it just creates a really nice sort of grid style look. So one thing to bear in mind with background images is how they'll translate to mobile. So an image might look great on, a background image might look great on all of the desktop and iPad sizes and that sort of thing, but then on mobile it just doesn't quite translate, because on mobile the text goes to a full mobile screen width sizing, and so if you've got a picture like this where half of it is a photo and half of it is dead space, it just won't work. So there's actually the feature to specify a tick box to specify for the background image to not show on mobile. So you can untick that so that it doesn't show on mobile, and then you can actually choose the stack background color. Even if you've got a image applied on desktop, the stack background color will still apply on mobile. So you can still get that sort of visual separation between sections on your mobile site, even if it's not appropriate to use the stack background image on the mobile site. The other thing to bear in mind is to choose images with sacrificial zones on the image. So with the feature area and with the stack backgrounds, as you adjust the window at various sizes, the left and right hand edge or the top and bottom edge of your feature area or stack background image may get trimmed, and it's just really important to make sure that the image that you're using will still look good, even if some of that sacrificial space, top and bottom or left and right of the image, won't work. So that, again, that's another vote in favor of why we would recommend trying not to put graphics or text in your stack background images or feature area images that has to always go right to the edge of, or top and bottom and left and right edges of the image, because it will get trimmed off. So the next tip that I'm going to go over is advanced picture block options. So you've probably all seen the hover states or mouse over effects with the picture block, and with the title effects that you'll see here. So here's three different ways of doing the title. These two are actually the same type of title, but just with different mouse over effects. And then this is another title style. So as you play with the different title styles, you'll see that that affects the hover states that are available. So and some of them have really limited options in terms of the hover state, and some of them have a lot of options. That's something that we're wanting to look at in future in terms of adding more options to the ones that don't have a lot of animation options. But say for this example here, which is quite a popular technique where you want the text to stand out so that it's not blending into the background image, so it's got a nice box around the text. And there's not actually any animation effects like these sort of ones that I was happy with on this title style. So what I did is I actually added a color overlay to only apply on hover. So it just creates that subtle effect that when you mouse over, something's happening. But the key thing to note on this is that this title style does have the most hover effects. So if you really, really want to use hover effects on a site, find a way to use the title style where there's no box behind the text and it's just centered there. So this surfer image here, the text stands out quite nicely there because it's already quite a dark image and it's quite a low contrast image. It's all quite a sort of dull color, and so that text just naturally stands out crisp there, and that hover effect looks nice. But on this example over here, we've got quite a busy dinner plate. The text would have been a bit lost, as you could imagine that this would be if there wasn't the box behind the text. So I've actually added a subtle tint to this image, and it's about striking that balance so the image still communicates the key thing, and tying that to the text that it still pops off the page, but the text contrast makes it the text stand out. And then you'll see that I've even on hover made the overlay even darker. So just taking that color overlay idea to another example, so you see here with these circle picture blocks, they've got a border around the edge and titles here. I've just added a white overlay effect, just a subtle mouse over effect there, and just adds a little bit of polish and yeah, to the design there. So I just want to dig a little bit deeper into using picture blocks as calls to action. There's a really wide range of things that you can do with this, and we're still working out ways that you can do it, and so it's really just limited by your imagination. But this call to action here is actually just a picture block, and the green box there is the title text, and we've given the title text background box a green color, the text white, and then the image itself is a clear-cut lifesaver icon on a white background. So it's just really different to a standard photo. So the picture block can be used for a really wide range of situations, and it can be a really visual way to add a bit more accent to a call to action than just having a standard button. But by doing this, it's actually still in keeping with the other call to actions on the site for a consistent look and feel. This is another example where images are used as call to actions to specific category areas, and then on mouse over there's a color overlay, again just to add that mouse over effect even if there's not an animation of the text moving. So this example is where a banner graphic has essentially been created at the bottom of the design with a picture block that's going full width. So this is the title text here, and then with the animation effect, mousing over, the subtext actually appears on mouse over, and a blue overlay appears as well to add more accent to the text. And so if you click through here, that will actually take you through to the retractable insert screens section of their website. So it's a nice way to create really crisp but also dynamic banners that, rather than being a static image that you've designed and then uploaded and it doesn't move when you mouse over, with this, when you actually mouse over, something's happening, which is a bit more engaging for the visitor. So just one last technique here with the picture block is, and again, just thinking of different ways that the picture block can be used to add visual accent to the design, to add that extra polish. So on this example, what we've done here is this is just a picture block, and we got an icon, a purple icon on a white background. So this grey border and the green border and the rounding effect weren't actually applied on the source image. That's a square image with a white background, and so we uploaded that and then applied the circle shape effect in the picture block settings to add the circle around the edge, and then we applied the border to that circle edge with the picture block border option, and then by doing that we can then change the color of that border on mouse over. So an advantage with that is that this circle edge and the border are being done with CSS and HTML and CSS rather than relying on pixels from an image. Even if you upload a really high resolution image, it will never be as smooth as a rounded corner edge or border done with CSS. So one thing that we're using a lot now is a website called Flat Icon. We just have a subscription there, and it basically means we can download any icons that we want there. There's a massive catalog of icons, and we download them. You can choose what color you want to make the image, and choose what size you want it to be. You download, and actually you can create them straight from that website at the size that's good to upload into Rocketspark. So you don't have to do that intermediary step of opening them in Photoshop or Illustrator and sizing them down or sizing them up or whatever. You can actually create the images ready for upload straight into Rocketspark, straight from Flat Icon. So it just, if you're doing a dozen icons, that makes that really fast. And then if you want to add a round effect, you can add the rounding effect with the circle shape. Cool, so that's the end of the prepared content. Doesn't look like there's any questions there, but if anyone does have any last minute questions that they want to fire through, send those through. But yeah, hopefully there was a few things there that were maybe new to you, or new ways to use tools that you've been using regularly but haven't thought about those ways of using them. Yeah, and in terms of making sure that you're really well prepared at the start of the project and you've got those bite-sized pieces of content so that the design is actually easy and it's not slapping the content in there and then trying to reverse engineer a good design. Cool, so it doesn't look like there's any questions there, so we're going to wrap it up there. And Greg, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Jeremy. That was great, and we'll put the recording of this up into the Facebook group. So if you're wanting to rewatch some things, then you'll be able to do that. Just one thing that to mention as well is with lots of the stack background stuff that Jeremy's been mentioning, there is also the ability to hide that on mobile. So there's a little tick box in the stack background settings, and often with lots of these things that we're doing for desktop on mobile, they just don't work. So just make sure that with all of the stuff that you've done, just make sure that it's going to work nicely on mobile, and if not, just flick the box and it will hide it on mobile as well. So yeah, so that's everything, and it will, if as you're leaving, there'll be an exit survey with things. If it's been really helpful, the things that you've that Jeremy's showing, then and you'd like to see more of this kind of stuff in terms of design help and that sort of thing, then definitely let us know, and we'll be happy to pull Jeremy in again, and we can go from there. Thanks. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you shortly at our next webinar. Thanks, guys.